This begins Column 45, Section 83, Log Discussion 5. Today's readings were mostly about stories and what makes a good story. The first one I started off with was the 7 Steps to a Perfect Story, and basically it's just a general graph that provides a pretty standard generalization of a good story. What it talks about most is whether or not you understand your story, because everything builds off of that one understanding. And it also mentions how, since there are a lot of stories being told in these days, any story that's being made now falls into a classification. However, it's based on the individual impact of each plot or story elements or characterization is what makes the story stand out in the modern day. Now, most of these stories, they contain a central protagonist, supporting characters, although sometimes that's not necessarily the case, but I can't really think of any examples where there aren't supporting characters. There needs to be a medium where they broadcast this story through, say like newspapers, articles, video games, shows, all that. And it's important for people to not reveal all of their story at once, but rather let it go through slowly, so then the audience can figure out what the story is themselves. And that usually leads to a more satisfying impact, in my opinion. Moving on, the next reading, Creating the Myth, talks about how everyone in the world is connected by stories and everyone shares the same experiences, essentially. But there's also stories that aren't necessarily factual, and the reading refers to these as myths. And there's 2 main types of these myths. One they talked about was search, and it's the desire to find something wondrous. And then the second one is hero, and it appeals to our human nature to overcome adversity. And these myths can classify anywhere from something that happens to everyone, but to a much greater scale, or it's fictitious characters that have experienced something we're all familiar with. And then it goes into the different types of myths. Personally, for me, I much enjoy the hero myths along with the healing myths. Those are those are my favorite tropes when it comes to stories. There's also the combination myth, which I usually just link back to the concept of Alice in Wonderland, where it's just a little bit of everything. And of course, all these myths aren't really complete without their characters with their own specific personalities and archetypes. But the main ones that they mention in the reading are the wise one, the shadow figure, the animal archetypes, and the trickster. And all of these are different cliches, personalities that exist in reading. And then lastly, the reading on Asian renovation of biracial buddy action. It starts off with a complicated history, and personally I'm pretty familiar with this history since I'm Asian myself. And the way it started off was white leads with black supporting characters, then it evolved into other races mixing with other races or of different genders, but usually white is usually one of the characters. And the reading also discusses how it ties back into a multiracial discussion of how these movies exist, and they create spaces where different people can interact and understand each other and clear up misconceptions with each other. But more importantly, the reading focuses on the Asian hero rather than the white or black hero. And it talks about how the Asian hero embodies a person not just by their masculinity, but also by their femininity. And the example they gave most through this was Jackie Chan in his movies with Carter in Rush Hour. And On a deeper scale, these movies talk, well, starting from the top, these movies usually portray a relationship between two unlike people. So there's Jackie who hails from Hong Kong, and there's Carter who hails from LA. They don't really have much in common, yet throughout the story they share experiences and they continue to interact throughout the story, and that makes them closer, and it shows a very human relationship of how people get together based on their shared experiences. But on a deeper scale, these interactions not only break racial barriers, but they also solidify national roots because throughout the entirety of Rush Hour, Jackie doesn't really stray away from his Hong Kong origins, and Carter doesn't really stray away from his LA origins. They just learn to adapt to each other and eventually work off of each other and their flaws. And none of them really had to change who they were, they just had to change how they saw each other. Yeah.